Hello and welcome to day 64 of 365 days towards racial change. My name is Tom Nyback. We're here discussing issues of race in America, primarily black folks, and how we get along in America. I want to kind of get us thinking about two veins of thought here. The first vein has two parts where we're thinking of does the slave mind, does the conditioning from slavery still being passed on from generation to generation? And conversely, does white thought of entitlement and privilege get passed on from generation to generation? Or are we still living that dynamic, even though we have the shell and appearance of freedom and inclusiveness? What's really going on when we dissect it and tear it apart and see where things are placed? And finally, on that note, are blacks understanding economics of America? Do they understand America as a corporation, a big corporation with a president or CEO? And how does money work? How is it created? Yes, money's created. It's not necessarily founded on something. That it's money itself. Green money has just as much value, really, as monopoly money. We just attach definitions and terms. It's a promissory note in a way. Very powerful. Starts wars, causes assassinations, the pickets, riots, unions, strikes, and stuff like that, poverty. Yet it's not, has no tangible foundation. And so hopefully through this year we'll get to some of that. Why I'm interested in this subject is I was introduced to the work of a man named Dr. Claude Anderson through a mutual friend of ours. I've never met him, but I've watched a lot of videos. I've read 3 of his books. First book I read was A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. Second was Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice, and Dr. Anderson's plan to empower Black America. PowerNomics, a lot of suggestions in here. We are referencing this work for the next couple of days, talking about politics, gearing up ourselves, trying to think about how we want to think, behave, perform in the upcoming 2020 election. It's more than a year away, but the race is beginning to heat up. People are beginning to make their bid. I'm hoping we just get rid of the incumbent president. It will be a step up for us. We'll also take a fictional look at slave life in America. We don't, through Harriet Beecher Stowe's work, Uncle Tom's Cabin, we check in on old Tom and see how he's doing. But on that note, we don't do enough to keep slavery or black heritage in the forefront. You know, it doesn't look as glamorous as some of the other groups that have so much revolution and bloodshed that they've initiated, that they've gained. They're like the Haitians, or there's Cinco de Mayo. I believe that's involved with some type of some military action. You think about those and all those coups and things. They have their celebrations. I've started to think about this over the past couple of days, and for us black folks, we were set free. We were allowed to vote. We had legislation against racism and open oppression. All these things that happen politically in America. Well, we've not aggressively arrested some of our things, like the Revolutionary War, some of those glamorous things like that. So I think blacks are shying away from that, and that may be an aspect of our problem of not getting what it is we want. We say we want reparations and stuff, but throw the term out there without connecting it properly to, to give the story, the narrative of why that's important. I mean, I'm a descendant of a slave that was not properly compensated for their free labor. They did not agree to give you free labor. Therefore, and then we can continue the conversation. So that's part of the reason why I'm here is the economic angle. Getting my small community's extreme microcosm of folks interested. I don't have a big following. This is mostly a personal project for myself. Moving forward, though, so there's two veins. Does the black or is the black conditioning still passed on from generation to generation? Is the white conditioning passed on from generation, and in between with the Asians, Vietnamese, Arabs, Hispanics, and all these other groups? Do they perpetuate this system? And politically, and since we're talking politically these next couple days, we've seen how these groups come along and they put on black oppression and some of that rhetoric and that conversation. And once they get a foothold on what they need out of America, they push the black folks aside. Black folks are always so inclusive, forgiving, loving, understanding, and all this stuff. It's been to our detriment. So that's a problem. And that second part of my whole basis for this project is for black folks to get to know, understand their dollars in America, how they're using them. We can't do much yet. Like, the part of the fight is being aware. So, I still go to Walmart and I buy it. My apartment's full of Chinese products because there aren't many American alternatives, let alone black alternatives, things like that. But we got to start. Let's start with awareness. It's going to take a long time. If in the future there's this moment, this black moment, of real participation in America, it's going to begin with these little grassroots things here in the beginning. Civil rights is the beginning. Underground Railroad is the beginning. We've had our little steps. One day they're going to come together and really happen, I think. So with hashtag us too, hashtag USTOO, black women, kind of in that forum. There's Black Enough, BLAGGENUF. If you have a business mind, great school out there, the Black Business School with a whole lot of branches and departments and stuff, are run by Dr. Boyce Watkins. If you can get him on the line, tell him I sent you. I've never met him either, but he's doing something. I believe he has a genuine heart. I personally don't like. It's a great idea in school. I don't like subscriptions. I don't like entanglements, period. I gotta admit. So I'm very careful about entanglements. But most of his products, his business is configured in that way. So I don't interact that much with him. But I do believe in his approach for people who can bear that type of financial dynamic. Now, group self-interest was one of the first things we talked about. Blacks having group self-interest, which is problematic with the conditioning that may have come from meritorious manumission, where blacks are informing on each other or doing better for their white masters than themselves. I think that has come into the 21st century, and also we talked about immigration issues, and we're not being sensitive enough to incoming groups flooding this nation and pushing us out, pushing us further and further away, and then they just take up the landscape, and all of a sudden we just don't exist anymore in there. Some of these groups coming in have said publicly and explicitly that they're here to usurp the position of black folks. The information I have from Dr. Anderson is more than a decade old, and he mentions it in his book. I think it's already happened. So there's some momentum that's going on. So in my personal life, my personal shortcomings and issues, I realized I've had to stop digging first before I can look up, crawl out of the hole that I've dug for myself. I had to first stop digging. Just believe in my mind I've hit the bedrock foundation of my life, and then start putting the brick and mortar up and stairs and begin to come out. I think I'm starting to see daylight. My head is bobbing up and down lately, but I've been underwater for many, many years. So that's the immigration issue mirrors that. Black folks need to stop digging first before we climb out of holes, because we've dug so sporadically. In our economics, we've not understood. In our social life, we've not understood where our true position in America, and therefore there's no real foothold. Every time we reach up, the ground gives way. So first, stop digging. Get some foundation under our feet. Stop being so distracted. I'm not going to go into all that, but that's where I'm at. I've stopped digging. I've started shoring up, putting stairs and ladders in my personal life. Blacks of the community need to do the same. So our third political action step that Dr. Anderson forwards is vertical integration in politics. And he talks in this piece, it's actually pretty short, we're coming out of PowerNomics, page 97. He talks about the ward system, and the ward system is where it means protection. It means this someone is protecting a person or a group. I grew up on the old 60s Batman and Robin, where we had pow and boom and smack and whack. Remember that stuff? But anyway, Dick Grayson was Bruce Wayne's ward. I think that's how they said it in the introduction of the Batman show. So Bruce Wayne and Batman protected Dick Grayson and Robin. So that's the sense in our politicians now. This is a European. Well, maybe it's all cultures. See, there we go again. See, I'm sure Africans had protectors, a system in place and stuff like that, but our historical books don't have that continuum, that continuation. So it's European thing, but we're not going to go into that right now. But Europeans, I can think, especially probably Italians and Jews, probably have that very well defined ward system where their constituents or voters or people are looking to that individual man or woman to look out for their interest and forward their designs in America, in business and all that. Who cares who's being supplanted, subverted, moved out, and stuff like that. So that's the ward system in this. And Dr. Anderson says specifically we need that system in place. And I say it's got to be visible, vocal, specific. We have to, blacks have to be really treated almost as an endangered species, so to speak. But absent of that explicit presentation of a ward system, we can do it implicitly among ourselves. We don't have to be so vocal and forward about it. Anyway, um, some of the history of the ward system, it was in place up until blacks started getting some civil rights traction, and this is before the 60s, this is even 20, 25 years earlier. I mean, there's always been some movement trying to uh, elevate blacks, but in the 40s especially, Dr. Anderson notes, is that when we were really, civil rights was really gaining some attention and traction, and under that ward system that may have been a common denominator in politics, blacks were like, okay, let's start gathering together. And this is why you see problems with voting in the South. Still today, you have white folks messing around with the voting in the South because they want to disrupt that black unity. It's part of the reason why they do that. And but back in the 40s or 1935 or so, as emergence of civil rights, as black people get their consciousness and start unifying, then the ward system, and it doesn't work so much that, or at least it's not explicitly in position to protect white or black folks, because they don't want black folks unifying, because they unify, they'll vote for their own people, and on ad infinitum, which has happened, and so you can't totally subvert it, but they want to resist it as much as they can. This ward system promoted policies of unity and stuff that which would not do for a dominant, entitled white society. You can think about, I think about Philadelphia as the most glaring one. The white flight, Philadelphia and other communities are listed as examples of that. You know, in Philly especially, they left North Philadelphia, that section called North Philadelphia. Last I've understood or known about North Philly, it's just like it's a problematic area, you know, and where whites go what's called Northeast Philadelphia, Roosevelt Boulevard area. You know, you get blacks trying to move in there, all of a sudden there's spray paint, hate crimes, and all this stuff flare up, you know, because whites, they don't want to commingle and stuff, which I say is cool. Then if you don't want that, then don't disrupt white or black unity and elevation in other areas. You know, police your own area, you know, I say. But don't get me started around that. All right. 4 points Dr. Anderson brings forth. The ward system is built around maintaining family and community ties. All right. That's an important point. That was something slavery just dismantled for black Americans, black slaves. You know, a family was not black family was not a priority. It was the strongest or the most fertile. You know, um, gave that black individual some elevated status and made them more susceptible to being separated from family and the community and whatnot. Just go on. You know, while a black woman may have a child or a few children, and she turns her back just for a woman, the child is sold off like that. The black man is he's a slave, but at least he's enjoying some family ties there, a wife and child that he's actually married or jumped the broom maybe, and children who's he's seen born and raised in the home, but he works so well that he gets sold out. That's old Tom's fate, as we found out a couple weeks ago. You know, he's doing so well in the community that now he's valuable and his slave master has messed up the funds and the money, so he sells Tom. Doesn't ask Tom. The slave didn't have a say in it, right? So the ward system about that family unity and all that is a part of that. That's it's acceptable for whites and Europeans, and they came in and they had all this and all these values and Christian attitudes and religiosity and all that stuff like that, but not for black folks. We're slaves. We're like mindless animals. That's how they kind of quench their consciousnesses, even though they know that they are abusing another human being for just the color of their skin, right? But they justify it in all kinds of ways. I just saw a movie. I think I've heard this before about something about the lobes in our brain, where it's magnified submission and caring, compassion, and things like that, where those lobes are small or are not existent in white folks and things like that. I think I've heard that before. It may be true or not. It doesn't say that we're like that by default, though, right? So all kinds of crazy stuff to justify being lazy and getting free labor and free land by force. So that's a problem there. But the ward system maintain family and community ties would be very important. The ward system would allow that group to pool their resources, get their resources circulating within the community. Remember, the whole subject is vertical integration, and the vertical integration, it would keep those resources in the black community, from these foundational issues, these foundational points, family unity, pooling resources, and all that would circulate up and down. The politician figuratively on top, and that body there, his constituents, performing and trusting that this politician is getting the job done out there in the higher echelons of politics, legislature, and stuff like that. That ward, or that protected group, would exercise self-interest in the marketplace. We wouldn't have to go to Walmart to spend our money. We're sending our money overseas, way overseas to China, because a high percentage of those products, are made in China. Look on the back of your garment, your television, computer, lamps, furniture. It's China mostly. High percentage from China. And these Walmarts, Walgreens, CVS, they're just Chinese consignment stores for stuff. Fortunately, I don't think much food. We don't get much food out of there. Food is apparently made closer to us, but our stuff, common stuff around. Look around and do your little experiment and see how much you supported China. I'm hard on China because they're most visible, but also because they're a people that do not reciprocate black business, don't want black business. Even at a better quality, at better price, they don't want to interact in black business, right? So they want to keep it homegrown for them. And so black folks got a little ways to go to turn around that economic aspect of it. And his fourth point is there be mutual obligations between black folks. You know, black folks, boy, we need some healing. I know I do. We need some group norms and begin practicing stuff. We're talking some things need to happen over a very long period of time. I'll tell you, one of my favorite science fiction series or books is Dune by Herbert, Frederick Herbert or something like that. Anyway, in there, so they got this planet. You know, it's illustrative of slavery in a lot of ways, but science fiction. So it's this planet, it's a desolate planet, but it's got this substance that allows commerce throughout the whole universe, right? And without that, people are isolated and stuff like that. It's very much like the slave race that began once Europeans found that free labor in Africa, free land over on the other side of the Atlantic in the Americas. You know, all these resources and riches popping out. But anyway, the Herbert's book is Dune is about transforming the face of this planet. Dune. The planet is called Dune. It's just a sandy, barren waste. But he says there's some water. But he says, you know, through an agricultural initiative and various devices, they could transform the whole planet into a lush environment. And the natives there, called the Fremen, said, well, how do you do that? You know, he already told the how. They say, okay, how long will it take? And he said, oh, over 400 years. Now, these are humanoids, and they have kind of regular lifespans and whatnot. But the Fremen are dedicated people. They're very resilient, strong, just a lot of traits that black folks have on the earth. And their response to the doctor that proposes this, his name is Dr. Kynes. Their response to Dr. Kynes is no problem. 400 plus years. So you know, that means you're looking at right, 8 to 10 generations of people sacrificing, living in such a way as to ensure this future of a vegetated planet and securing a better future for their children. 8 to 10 generations of sacrifice. And they do it. They actually perform it. You got to read the story. Some miraculous stuff happens. But they begin that process, and they started, what they need is water. And they start doing that. And it's pretty impressive. Please read that book. It's called Dune. Read the first one. That'll give you the whole basis for the whole series. But that's what black folks need. You know, now I don't have a number. I don't have a year's thing because blacks are all over the map with successes and failures and stuff like that. So it's hard for us to focus on. I think we're kept distracted with our brand new gadgets. It's phenomenal how blacks, boy, you set anything new down and we're our disposable income just goes right out the door. My weakness is books. I'm a perpetual learner. So, but anyway, there is a time frame, you know. But if we could just come together, see, That's one of the weaknesses, I would say, of Dr. Anderson's work, is he wanted to see this stuff happening, like it be a sweeping revolution where people got on board that no humans behave like that unless we're seriously oppressed, which would, if blacks were like that, that would have happened um, before slavery really got going. We got some stuff to address to show some blacks that did resist initially and stuff like that. You don't hear much about that, but blacks as a group, we were just enslaved. So that's a problem. So my problem with Dr. Anderson's work is he wanted to see some of this stuff really moving and happening in his lifetime. And I think he's still alive. I'm pretty sure he is. It would have been more realistic to explicitly say that these are the seeds, these are some foundational things we can do, to ensure something awesome happening 2.5, 300 years down the road. It's hard to get people on board with that kind of plan. I understand it. I think I can do that. Hopefully this is a little piece of that. We're over time. That's part 3, vertical integration in politics. We talked about the ward system. Stick around. We're going to continue our political exploration here in light of the upcoming 2020 election. Tomlin's NIBAC, that's 365 days towards racial change. We'll see you tomorrow.